in magazines around the world. But nevertheless, it was still collecting information. It was an attempt to talk to people who think differently, people with different mentalities.
Думающими по-разному, людьми с разным менталитетом.
It's partly a test of how people perceive this information, but the main idea revolved around an idea, and this idea has to do with our civilization and the evolution of our civilization.
Идеи, и эта идея имеет отношение к нашей цивилизации и к эволюции нашей цивилизации.
After all, in fact, I sometimes say this in my presentations, are now, I mean our civilization, at the same stage of its development at which the civilization of Mars was.
На том же этапе своего развития, на котором находилась цивилизация Марса.
And it is very important to understand and realize this, because it was from the moment, first of all, when they began to develop very dynamically, when they began to explore near space, in fact, for us, Earthlings, they became the very civilizers that.
Осваивать ближний космос, по сути дела, они для нас, землян, стали теми самыми цивилизаторами, которых...
Yes, wrongly. The history of the Veda translating the ancient text is called the gods. They are not gods at all. But they gave us a certain amount of information that played both a positive and a negative role in the fate of our civilization. But nevertheless, it was an evolutionary role, and we developed after the events related to the great stellar flood occurred. It is not by chance that I use this image.
Мы развивались после того, как произошли события, связанные с великим потопом звездным, не случайно я использую этот образ.
I am referring to the great catastrophe in the solar system, which, on the one hand, put a period, or rather, let's say a comma, in the development of the civilization of our solar system.
А точнее, скажем, запятую в развитии цивилизации нашей Солнечной системы.
But millennia have passed, and we are growing. We have grown up enough. We have entered the near space.
Мы уже достаточно выросли, мы вышли в ближний космос.
And we have grown up just so much that we have come to the stage of our growing up, when we will have to enter serious youth from adolescence, already conscious.
Уже из отрочества войти в серьезное юношество, уже осознанное.
Ahead and very, very soon, conscious interaction will begin with representatives of the civilization of the solar system, who live on the planet Marduk behind the sun.
Цивилизации уже Солнечной системы, которые живут на планете Мардук за Солнцем.
These are very important events that will have to determine the evolution of our solar system as a whole, and its subsequent integration into the structure of the galaxy. And a lot will depend on how we make this transition. Therefore, the book that will be published literally the day after tomorrow, as I said, is a program book, in which we begin a completely new stage in the knowledge of the preserved monuments of antiquity. Artifacts of all kinds of knowledge of the pyramids, knowledge of man, how he is integrated into the structure of the universe, that, I mean, in the near future will become a key aspect. It is in this phase of establishing diplomatic relations between the planet Earth and the planet that is located behind the sun and outer space.
Я имею в виду, что в ближайшее время станет ключевым аспектом вот в этой фазе установления дипломатических отношений между планетой Земля и той планетой, которая находится за Солнцем, и внешним космосом.
In order for us to prepare for all this, people need to be aware. And it is not by chance that I once again return to the idea that a new era is beginning. A new era in the analysis of preserved monuments, because there were many books published, a lot of materials. But they were too far from the reality, the awareness of which can give a person a chance to pass this very important stage and enter a new stage of his life in such a way that nothing prevents us from going through this difficult period. And it is not by chance that I started talking in my previous presentations about Gilgamesh, about his mission, which, on the one hand, passed its stage in those distant times, after which a long period of degradation came, and we are now rapidly approaching its completion.
Я начал разговор в своих предыдущих презентациях о Гильгамеше, о его миссии, которая, с одной стороны, в те далекие времена прошла свой этап, после чего наступил длительный период деградационный, и мы сейчас стремительно подходим к его завершению.
Now a new stage begins. And so each of us will have to fulfill the mission of Gilgamesh. And each of us is in his place. And this book, which will be published the day after tomorrow, is a book that will allow people who get acquainted with it to look at the world with the same eyes that those who brought this knowledge to Earth more than 20,000 years ago looked at the world with. This is the book of the beginning. After it, a book, also very important, will have to be published, but in a completely new format. The book of the Caduceus of Horus, or the Wands of Horus. And after that, there is already a very important job, for which I have been preparing for many years. It will be called Hierophants, where I will talk about very important things, very fundamentally important things, without the awareness of which we will not be able to realize the interests of the outer cosmos. We will not be able to find a common language with them, which is extremely dangerous for the future of our civilization. So we have to prepare. And I invite all those who are listening to us now to cooperate. Let's do our best to make this book the property of our civilization as soon as possible. And the point here, believe me, is not that, as someone might think, I'm trying to dupe in my work, in my book. No, it's not that at all. And I want you to understand. Everything that will be written in this book, or has already been written, and you will get acquainted with, it is not the result of my labors. This is all that has been preserved in ancient texts from a very extensive and very important field of knowledge of the ancients. The themes are awesome, and these will be the most important topics. These will be pyramids and the mechanism of their impact. This will be the theme of reincarnation. And in fact, everything that, on the one hand, will return to us global knowledge about the source of good and evil, power and impotence, after which civilization will have not only a powerful incentive, but also serious opportunities to influence the world. But who and what this knowledge will serve will depend on the fact that now we will bring a lot of accumulated garbage into the consciousness of civilization. A lot. Every time I analyze the size of this, excuse the words, garbage dump, I cringe, I'm shaking, and I think we have very little chance. There are too many false information and distortions. But on the other hand, when you think about the fact that nevertheless, it's us, it's our children, our grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and for their sake, I am convinced that it is worth making this effort and trying to change our civilization for the better.
и попробовать изменить нашу цивилизацию к лучшему.
In what this book will have to play its very important role.
Сыграть свою очень важную роль.
And so once again, I want to say thank you that we are together. Thank you so much for taking part in the dissemination of information. And we will start with the presentation, which will take place on the 21st of May. At least that's what we planned. And all the necessary organizational information will be regularly published in our chat rooms, and you will be able to have a complete idea of when, where all this will happen, ask questions and get answers to them. The main message from me I gave you. And now if you have any questions, and we have this unique chance to communicate directly, then I am ready to answer them. And I hope that, Olya, you will help us then.
Yes, with pleasure.
Because I can't see.
Well, now just a second. Then let me tell you about the organizational aspects about the presentation in a little more detail. And everyone who wants to communicate with you now by voice, please come up with your questions while there is really such an opportunity. For a couple of minutes there, literally, I'm going to tell you now. It means that we have an event scheduled for the 21st of May, and there was a postponement, because we planned for the 29th of April, but with the publishing house there, as it were, such deadlines are unstable, so we decided to hedge and reschedule. Well, as we understood, it turns out to be more convenient for many, because someone there, due to questions with relatives, could not come, although he really wanted to, well, and many different others. Therefore, if anyone else is going to attend the presentation in Moscow, then please buy tickets more actively, because we will need to book the appropriate hall in accordance with the purchased number of tickets. Therefore, if we understand how many people there are, it will be easier for us to organize presence and seating. And what will we have at the presentation? It will be practically for the whole day. The event will start at 11, and registration of participants at 10:30. Then, there will be a presentation from Valery. This is a small lecture, and as far as you have told me, Valor, it will be something that you have never told before.
Never told me because.
And that they don't say it out loud.
In a sense, yes. Yes, it will be so. But I will say literally 2 words, that there really are issues related not only to the pyramids. Because when we ask the question of why some feature is embodied in the pyramid, and few people ask themselves the question, and realize that this feature is connected not only with the pyramid. This is a reflection of certain processes occurring both in the human body and in the environment around us. All of this is so interconnected that it is directly related to some very great changes in consciousness, in the psychophysical structure, and in the evolution of civilization in general. These are such important topics, and there are some that I want to say a few words about during the presentation. So it will be very important. I myself am waiting for this moment, and I hope that I will be so ready for it that I can, and we will have the opportunity and time. And this mutual common vibration that will allow us to convey to you the essence of these ideas, which I am sure will not leave any of you indifferent.
I'll continue then. So we have a presentation at 11. At 13:00, we will take a break for lunch. At 14:00, we will continue with the lecture again. Again, at 16 o'clock, there will be an opportunity to ask questions to Valery. At 16:30, which makes me very happy, there will be autograph sessions, photo shoots. Everyone who comes will have a unique opportunity to get your autograph in a book that can be purchased right there at the event. In other words, these are hot cupcakes. Therefore, be sure to come. And at 18:00, dinner with VIP guests. We have a VIP tariff, that is, those who want to be even closer to you at this moment. We will make a special party like this. And I know that several people have already bought such a ticket, and really well done, because it is in such an informal setting that the most unofficial details of, probably, yes, sacred knowledge are being clarified, and somewhere you can give personal advice to someone.
Well, such human relationships are established for a long time. Absolutely different, of course.
Yes. And that's why we have two types of participation. This is standard. It's 1,000 rubles. Participation in the presentation, of course, is an opportunity to get an autograph, a photo, access to all the materials of the free course on our page, which you probably know everything, but we will duplicate it in the chat. And the VIP fare is all the same, but only with an evening reception, so to speak, with an evening dinner, and, accordingly, discussions. And now, in principle, if you want, you can chat. I see that Alexei has already raised his hand. I would like to ask a question.
Come on.
Alexei, you have the floor. Turn on the microphone, please.
Hello? Hello?
Здравствуйте.
You once told me a long time ago that you had a contact in the pyramid, and very clear, and after that there was contact.
Очень четкий и ясный. А после этого был контакт.
But if you remember, there was even filming on this occasion. There was a program, now we can say it on REN TV, where I told in sufficient detail that when we turned on the pyramid of Cheops and it worked, and this telepathic contact began, they immediately said that the first thing, for several thousand years of the last, for the first time, we managed to turn on the pyramid, because we did everything right. And they, despite the fact that the pyramid of Cheops was destroyed, and they then conveyed a very curious image to the consciousness of a Stradivarius violin with a pierced soundboard. And we recognized the voice of the pyramid of Cheops. We heard you. In other words, they stressed once again that we did everything right, but warned that this contact would be a one-time one. It would be without continuation. But, nevertheless, they directly said that the very fact of recording the sound with which we turned on the pyramid, we also did everything right, and now they just advised that we save this record, then we can transfer it to any place, to any room, and use it as a vibration to transfer the energy of the pyramid Cheops to the place where this music will sound.
В любое место, в любое помещение и использовать как вибрацию для переноса энергии пирамиды Хеопса в то место, где данная музыка будет звучать.
In other words, they kind of said that there is such a technology. I used to think a lot about this topic before this experiment took place. I studied a lot of different kinds of ideas and texts until I realized how it really works. And when I realized, then we arrived there in full readiness, with the equipment, installed everything, did everything, got the result, and took the recording with us, which of course is with us. Naturally, we used this record in the Tomsk pyramids, although they are still under construction. And there is still the most important work to be done. This is the connection of an underground system of energy sources, which I think about during the course I will also tell you about. This is a very interesting topic, but nevertheless, there is information about this on the site. We managed to do the most important thing there, because right after that, literally on the day when we handed over to the investor, to the person who invested the money, the main external contour of the pyramid is 9 pieces with corner ectitors. And when we created this energy pyramid, a UFO object appeared. And he quite obviously put the so-called GPS tags on this complex on the galactic map. That is, now it is not enough that this complex is visible on the energy map of the galaxy. They added him to their lists. In other words, they have it now, and, if necessary, they naturally use these labels to come here, well, and solve some of their own tasks, but I myself, as the architect of this complex, understand very well that now through this complex, we can establish another channel of energy informational interaction. In addition to this, there is also a deep energy interaction that can take part in the positive transformation of humanity's consciousness.
Помимо этого и глубинного такого энергетического взаимодействия, которое может принять участие вот в позитивной трансформации сознания человечества.
Naturally, I am primarily interested in Russia. That is why we have installed the complexes, in fact, in the very center of Russia. There is a giant lake at a depth of 300 meters under the complex, probably the size of Lake Baikal, if not more. And imagine, I'm talking about this, and we talked with Olya in the previous broadcast on the Toksovskaya pyramid, that this water, this giant lake, connects this complex with the global energy system of planet Earth, and it opens up amazing opportunities. But we need to finish everything. So here's a long answer to your question, Alexei, but it's exhaustive.
Great. Then we have Alexander. So, Alexander, speak up, please. Just turn on the microphone. Alexander Putnik, I have you highlighted.
Yes, I haven't heard anything yet.
Now, Alexander, you wanted to ask a question. Please ask if you haven't changed your mind.
Вы хотели задать вопрос, пожалуйста, задавайте, если не передумали.
Friends. Maybe yes. Friends, if anyone else wants to ask a question, please raise your hand. There is a special button for this.
But I earned it. Press. Hello, everyone. Valery, well, given the answer, the question immediately arises, and with whom exactly did you communicate in the pyramid? Well, did you somehow find out the source? That is, were they those behind the sun, or was it the outer one? No, it was those who were behind the very idea of building the pyramid of Cheops. You understand that the pyramid of Cheops, the whole complex, did not appear by chance. With all the external simplicity of this complex, it embodies amazing levels of knowledge, which we will talk about during the course. I will certainly tell you something that you will never read about anywhere. But I am going to speak and write in the book so that now it all becomes the property, your property, the property of your intellect, and you can use it. So it was those who gave knowledge in order to be able to interact with the pharaohs and priests, in order to observe everything that is happening on the one hand, to give knowledge, and take a certain part in evolution. First in transformation, and then in the evolution of all those processes that are taking place on planet Earth, and which are coming to an end today. And here is our course. Its idea is precisely to give you the widest possible retrospective of everything that happened. For obvious reason, and certainly none of the people should take it as an insult or something like that. But people don't know this truth. Here it is necessary to learn it. It is necessary to master this truth.
эту правду.
And when
И
you
когда
have
у
this
вас появится
information,
эта
you will have
информация,
the
у вас будет
opportunity to
возможность
analyze it.
ее анализировать.
And you will
И у
have an
вас
understanding
появится
of why,
понимание,
for what
а
the
почему,
outsiders started this whole
ради
15,000-year-old
чего
game,
внешние
in which, of
затеяли всю
course,
эту
not only we and not only
15
the Anunnaki
игру,
were absolutely
в
slandered
которой,
up to a certain
безусловно,
period.
участвовали не только мы, и не только аннунаки до определенного периода, оболганные абсолютно,
But the
но
direct
и
curators also
прямые
participated and
кураторы
participated.
участвовали и участвуют. Но
But in addition
помимо
to this, there are
этого,
still
не
parties
все
who
стороны
participated in this whole
участвовали во всем
case,
этом деле.
and not
И
always with
не
a
всегда
positive
с
attitude,
позитивом, всегда с
always with some
какими-то
interests of their own.
своими интересами.
So
Так
as
вот,
long
до
as
тех пор,
people do
пока
not
люди
know
не
who it
знают,
is,
кто
what
это,
it is,
что
and
это и
for
ради
what,
чего,
there is no way to analyze
нет
the internal impulse
возможности
that arises not
анализировать
only in a
внутренний
person,
импульс,
but
который
also in
возникает не только в
cosmopolitanism,
человеке,
in global
но
politics
и в
on planet Earth,
космополитике,
even in
в
ecopolitics.
глобальной политике на планете Земля, даже в экополитике.
And
Или
without
без
understanding,
понимания,
believe me,
поверьте,
it's
это
like
как вот
today's politics.
сегодняшняя политика. Вот
There
есть
is America,
Америка,
there is
есть
Russia,
Россия,
there
есть
is the European
Евросоюз,
Union,
есть
there is
Китай,
China, there are
есть
politicians, there is
политики,
the
есть
president.
президент,
There are
есть
us,
мы,
but there is no most
но нет
important
самого
thing.
главного.
There is no third
Нет
party
вот этой
here.
вот самой третьей стороны.
Nobody
О ней же
talks
никто не
about her.
говорит.
We
Мы же
analyze the
анализируем
behavior of
поведение.
how
Ну
it
вот
was today at the front, and in
сегодня
general
на
in
фронте,
politics in
вообще в
Europe,
политике в
this,
Европе
this,
было
and this.
это.
We
Мы
believe
считаем,
that
что
all of
все
this
это
will lead
ведет
to
к
this,
этому,
to
и к
this,
этому.
and to this. You're
На
welcome.
здоровье
Count
считайте.
it. But
Но
if
если
you
вы не
don't know
знаете,
what
ради
the outer
чего
space
затеял
started
внешний
all
фокус
this
всю
fuss
эту возьму,
for, you won't have an
у вас
understanding
не
of what
будет
awaits us
понимания,
all in the very near future.
что нас всех ждет в самое ближайшее будущее.
I'm
Две
going to
секундочки,
turn
я
on the rear
выключу задний
screen
экран.
for a second.
Вот.
That's why
Поэтому
I'm
я
talking
об
about
этом,
this
вот именно об этой
cosmopolitanism,
космополитике.
and it
И
was
те,
quite
кто
obvious to those who talked to
тогда с нами
us.
разговаривал, это было совершенно очевидно.
Since
Раз
they
они
said that
сказали,
we
что
are
мы
your
пирамиду
pyramid,
вашу,
that is, we
мы
heard
ее
it, it means
услышали,
that they built it.
то это говорит о том, что это они ее построили. То
That
есть,
is,
ну вот
if we
если мы
extrapolate this situation
экстраполируем эту
to our modern
ситуацию на
ideas, that
наши
is, they have
современные
transmitting
представления,
devices techniques.
то есть у
And there
них
are
есть
transmitting devices
приемопередающие
techniques
устройства,
here.
и здесь есть приемопередающие устройства.
They brought
Они
it here, set it up in a
принесли
certain
его
way,
сюда,
and if this
настроили
transmitter
определенным
went
образом,
off, and they
и
heard
если
it,
этот
that's what they did.
передатчик сработал, и они услышали, значит, это они и сделали.
They were
Они и
watching.
наблюдали. И
After
для нас
all, it was
тогда в
quite
пирамиде это было
obvious to us then in
совершенно
the pyramid.
очевидно.
Question number 2. To open up a little topic, you have already touched it somehow about this. Like God, our Lenin mausoleum, the so-called. In one of the videos you once, in my opinion, a couple of years ago on this topic. Yes,
Да, мы
we are at
начинали
the final.
разговор. Мы начинали
Is there
разговор.
anything new that can be explained to us now? That this topic periodically pops up in our information space, and, so to speak, it is being awakened. It floats up and immediately sinks, floats up and immediately sinks. How the topic of a pyramid-shaped colossal object over the Kremlin surfaced and immediately disappeared again. Why? Because the topic is very important. It is evolutionarily super significant. But we can't do it with you.
Мы не сможем с вами ее
Even here they have designated it, but we don't have time to explain it with you. We plan to have a conversation about this during our course, but in addition, it will be necessary to present information in different
Но помимо
formats.
этого, необходимо будет информацию представить в разных форматах.
In other words,
То есть мы будем
we are going
снимать
to make a
кино.
movie. And
И
it
это
will
будет,
probably be
возможно,
2 or even
2,
3
а то и
episodes of the
3
film,
серии
where very
фильма,
detailed,
где
and
будет
believe
дана
me,
очень
so
подробная и,
unexpected
поверьте,
information will be given that you did
настолько
not expect
неожиданная
anything
информация,
from that side.
что вы и не ждали чего-либо с той стороны.
But when
Но
you
когда
learn
вы об
about
этом
it, you have
узнаете,
the
у вас
slightest doubt
и
not
тени
that this is
сомнений
so,
не
because
будет,
all the
что
puzzles
это именно
together,
так, потому что все пазлы сойдутся.
absolutely
Абсолютно все.
everything.
Поэтому я
Therefore,
вам
I
не
cannot
могу
give you an
дать
exhaustive answer
сейчас
now.
исчерпывающий
I will
ответ.
say that
Скажу,
yes.
что да.
That is
Именно
why the
поэтому
history of
история
Lenin's
мавзолея
mausoleum
Ленина,
is still kind of
она по
strange to this
сей
day.
день какая-то вот странная.
That is, they raised the
подняли разговор,
conversation,
пошипели
hissed
по
about it.
этому поводу.
Some
Одни
shout,
кричат,
let's
давайте
take it
мы его
out and
вынесем
bury
и
it,
закопаем,
while
а другие
others
говорят,
say
не надо
don't
его
touch
трогать и не
it and
трогай.
don't touch it. I'll just
Просто
say for
скажу от
myself,
себя, не
they
трогай
don't touch
потому,
it because
что
this
весь
whole
этот
project
проект — это
is a
проект
Shambhala
Шамбалы.
project. And in this
И в
case,
данном случае,
as
как бы это ни
strange as
странно
it may
прозвучало,
sound,
но
but the
коммуняки,
commies, with
при
all
всем
due
моем
respect to
уважении к ним,
Klim,
они
they worked
сработали
under
под Шамбалу.
Shambhala. Unconsciously, of
Неосознанно,
course.
конечно.
And
А
here's
вот
how it is
как это
and
и
why we
почему
will
мы
talk to
будем
you
с вами
later.
говорить позже.
Another
Другое
thing
дело,
is
что да,
that, yes, humanity
человечество
in many
во
ways
многом
did
не
not
оправдало
justify the trust of
доверие
Shambhala.
Шамбалы.
Shambhala
Шамбала по
flew
этому
by on this
проекту
project.
пролетела.
But
Но
our
наша с вами
presentation is a
презентация — это
continuation of
продолжение
this
этой
story.
истории.
And
И
I would
очень бы
really like to
хотелось
get out of it,
все-таки из нее
well,
выйти,
at least in a white
ну,
suit.
по крайней мере, в белом костюме. Поэтому
Therefore,
давайте
let's meet.
встречаться,
Let's move this topic forward.
давайте
And believe me, come to the
двигать эту
course.
тему.
You will not
И
regret it.
поверьте, приходите на курс, не
I'll tell
пожалеете,
you a
многое
lot.
расскажу. Смотрите
Watch
фильмы,
movies, and you
и
will
вы
understand.
поймете.
I will
Одно
say one
скажу,
thing,
вот просто
just after that,
вдогоночку,
that the Great
что
Patriotic War,
Великая
the way it
Отечественная
developed,
война, то, как
has
это
the most
развивалось,
direct relation to the
имеет
mausoleum.
к мавзолею самое прямое отношение.
And I
И
will
еще
also
скажу, что
say that
войну
we won the
выиграли.
war. As
Как
strange
это тоже
as it may
не странно
sound,
прозвучит,
for historians, it
для
is
историков
generally a
это вообще
delusional
бред
mare.
сивой кобылы.
They'll get
Начнется
hysterical.
истерика.
So the
Так вот,
war was
войну
won in the
выиграли
winter of the 42nd year, the
зимой
beginning of the
42-го года,
43rd,
начало 43-го,
January,
январь,
February.
февраль. Вот
That's when
когда
the
была
war was
выиграна
won.
война.
And
И я
I'll
вам
tell you
скажу,
how
как
it was
это было
done.
сделано.
It's
Это
stunningly perfect.
потрясающе совершенно.
When
Когда
I
с
was
этим
confronted
столкнулся,
with this,
а те,
and
кто
those who
участвовал еще
participated in
в
one
той
way
или
or
иной
another,
мере, и все
and
были
their families
живы.
alive.
Так вот, когда
So
я
when I
узнал,
found out, I was
я, наверное,
probably
года
under a very
2-3
deep impression for 2 or
находился
3
под
years.
очень глубоким впечатлением.
I
Я,
really
правда,
am
сейчас
now,
нахожусь,
but
но
I
я
am a
сейчас
little
немножко
more
более
balanced
уравновешен.
now. It is
Уже
already
можно
possible
на
to
эту
talk
тему
about this
говорить
topic
без
without
дрожи
trembling in your
в
hands
руках
and
и
voice.
голосе.
But it's
Но это
very
очень
interesting.
интересно. Так что
So we have
нас
very
впереди
interesting
ждут
days
очень
and stories
интересные
ahead
дни
of us.
и истории.
Is it the
Это
plasma balls
плазменные
that
шары,
burned the
которые
tank? Is it
танки
from this
сжигали.
opera?
Это из
Well,
этой
no,
оперы.
come
Ну
on,
нет,
it's
ну
all
что вы, это
primitive.
все примитив.
Everything
Все
is much
гораздо
more
сложнее и
complicated
гораздо
and much
интереснее.
more interesting.
Ну,
Well,
предлагаю
then I suggest we
тогда
wrap
нам
it up
потихонечку
slowly. If
закругляться,
there are
если
no more
больше вопросов
questions,
нет.
if
Если
there are any
еще
other
какие-то
У меня
вопросы.
questions,
еще
I
есть.
still have some.
are
Ну
you
вы прям
prepared right
подготовились,
now?
У меня их
хорошо.
много.
Давайте, давайте.
Well,
Ну, я
I think it's
думаю,
actually not
собственно, это
only
не
interesting
только
to
мне
me,
же
to some
интересно. Это
extent, the
в какой-то
mouthpiece of the
степени
chat.
рупор чата.
Such a
Такой
question.
вопрос.
Do you
С
maintain any
официальными
contact with
как-то
the official
структурами
structures of
нашего
our state,
государства вы
but are they
какой
somehow
контакт
aware of your
поддерживаете? Ну, они
research?
как-то в курсе вообще ваших исследований? Ну,
But
Ну,
someone
конечно,
probably
наверное,
does.
да.
Of
конечно,
course,
конечно.
yes.
Конечно, да. Вот.
But now there
Но
is such a period in the life
сейчас
of
такой период
civilization and Russia
в
itself,
жизни
when some people should
цивилизации
and do their own thing,
и,
and we
собственно,
continue
России,
to move our own
когда
way.
одни люди должны и занимаются своим делом, а мы продолжаем двигаться своим путем.
We are
Мы
going in
идем
parallel,
параллельно, но у
but we
нас
have the same
одинаковые
goals.
цели.
We
Мы
want
хотим,
Russia
чтобы
to take its
Россия
true place,
заняла свое истинное место.
because a
Потому
bet
что
was
на
made on Russia
Россию
thousands of years ago,
была
and I
сделана
know what I'm
ставка
talking about.
тысячелетия назад. И я знаю, о чем я говорю.
And
И
I
очень
would
бы
very much
хотелось,
like us to fulfill the
чтобы
mission
мы
entrusted to us,
выполнили возложенную на нас миссию.
and
А все к
everything
тому и
goes to
идет.
that. Well,
Ну, тогда
then the last
последний
question.
вопрос.
There has been a
Много
lot in the information space in
инфопространства
recent years.
последние годы.
This is
Это
about
про
Antarctica and the
Антарктиду и
events
те
that take
события,
place
которые
there.
там происходят.
Well,
Вот
that
тут
is,
что-то
something
якобы
was
там
allegedly
нашли
found
под
there under the
льдом,
ice. There are
немецкие
German
базы.
bases and,
Ну, в общем,
well,
вот
in
про
general
это
about
что-то.
this,
Я
I
думаю,
think
вас
you
тоже
also
есть
have some
какое-то
kind of
свое
opinion.
мнение.
Absolutely.
Вот,
Please
обратите
note,
внимание,
the expedition of
1947
Doctor until the
года, та же
47th
самая
year is
история.
the same story. They will talk,
Поговорят,
someone will raise
кто-то
this
поднимет
topic, and
эту
try to make a
тему
sensation out of it,
и
and
постарается, не
immediately
пытается
other
сделать из
voices are
нее
heard,
сенсацию,
who are trying
и
to
тут
reduce
зазвучат
everything to
другие
some kind
голоса,
of understandable, primitive,
которые
nothing
пытаются
happened and so
все
on.
свести к каким-то понятным, примитивным, ничего не было и так далее.
And I have
И
said it and I want to repeat it
говорил, и
again.
еще раз хочу повторить.
If the
Если
topic
тема
rises and
поднимается
immediately
и тут же
disappears,
исчезает,
then there is a great truth
значит, за
behind
этой
this
темой
topic.
стоит великая правда.
If the
И если
topic
тема
is raised
поднимается, и
and
ее
it is
обсуждают
discussed
там
there for
полгода-год,
6 months
чушь
or a
собачья,
year,
какой
bullshit has
типа
nothing nothing to do with reality. Yes,
Да.
the thing is that the
Всё дело в том,
Nazis
что
really managed to get in
нацистам
touch with a parallel
действительно
civilization of the Earth.
удалось выйти на контакт с параллельной цивилизацией Земли.
Indeed,
Действительно.
but of
Ну,
course
она,
it is
конечно,
not inside the
находится не
hollow Earth,
внутри
but in no
полой Земли.
case.
Да ни в коем случае.
It's just
Просто
that there
там,
in
в
Antarctica,
Антарктиде,
there is a portal, there is a
там
chronological
портал, там
transition,
хронный переход.
one of the most powerful
Один
on
из
Earth,
самых мощнейших
from one
из
dimension
одного
to another.
измерения в другое.
And there
И
people
там
lived,
жили люди,
live, and will live.
живут и будут жить.
Civilization
Цивилизация
surpasses ours
превосходит
in
нашу
terms
по
of
уровню
development.
развития.
Therefore, we will
И
also
об
talk
этом
about this during the
поговорим
course and
тоже и во
afterwards.
время курса, и впоследствии.
But
Но
here we
здесь
need
к
to
этой теме
prepare
нужно
very seriously
очень
for this
серьезно
topic.
подготовиться.
This is
Это
one of the
одна из
topics that we
тем,
will bring to the government level.
которую мы будем выводить на правительственный уровень.
We will
Однозначно
definitely
будем
output
выводить.
it. This is
За
the
этим
future of Russia,
будущее России.
but this
Но
must
это
be
надо
done
делать
competently
грамотно
and
и
carefully.
осторожно.
Therefore,
Поэтому
we do
делаем,
it
не
slowly.
торопясь.
And at the
И в
North
России,
Pole, I
в России,
believe,
я так
there is
полагаю,
also
тоже
something
что-то
like that.
такое есть.
Similar
Но
ones.
личных
На
коридор.
северном,
No,
нет, на
it's a
Северном
different
полюсе
story at the
там
North Pole.
другая история.
That is, at the North Pole,
То есть на
this is the
Северном
place of
полюсе
entry
это
and
место
exit.
входа-выхода. Вот
The South
Южный
Pole
полюс
is
это
the
Южный
South
полюс, а
Pole,
Северный это
and the North
Северный.
Pole
Об
is the
этом
North
будем
Pole.
говорить во
We
время
will talk about
вот
this
и
during the
курса, и
course,
эфира, и
and the
всего того,
broadcast,
что
and
последует
everything
за
that
этим.
follows. In the
А
meantime,
пока мы
we have all gathered
собрались все
together,
вместе,
and
пока мы
while we
делаем
are
вот эти
taking these
шаги,
steps,
первые
the
шаги
first steps
в
in this
этом
direction.
направлении, и
And
именно
that is why
поэтому с
from the
самого
very
начала я
beginning
сказал,
I
что мы
said that we
находимся в
are in a
очень
very
важной
important
фазе.
phase. Now a
Сейчас
completely
начинается
new stage in
совершенно
the history
новый
of our
этап в
civilization is
истории нашей
beginning,
цивилизации.
and it
Он
starts
начинается
here.
здесь,
It
он
starts in
начинается в
Russia.
России.
And we
И мы
have to
должны
do everything
все
consciously,
сделать
correctly, without
осознанно,
failures.
правильно, без сбоев.
And
И
then we will
тогда
have
у
a
нас
very
будет
interesting
очень
future.
интересное будущее.
Welcome.
Добро.
Well,
Ну
my
что, дорогие
dears,
мои,
are
есть
there
еще
any
какие-то
more
вопросы?
questions? And then we'll
И
slowly
тогда мы
wrap up.
потихонечку закругляемся.
A few
Немножечко
words
пару слов,
while
пока вы
you are
думаете, я
thinking.
скажу по
I will
поводу
say
того,
about the
что
fact that we are
курс нам
already
все-таки в
initiating the
ближайшее
course in
время
the near
уже
future because we
инициируем, потому
faced
что
certain
столкнулись
difficulties
с
while
определенными
preparing the first
сложностями,
lesson.
пока готовили первый урок.
Here,
Вот, но все
but the
равно
platform is ready
уже
anyway. Who has not
платформа
yet
готова,
entered
кто
the
еще
free
не
author's
заходил
course,
на
then come
бесплатный
in,
авторский курс, то
register on the
заходите,
platform. We
регистрируйтесь
are
на
doing
платформе.
everything possible.
Делаем все
Believe me,
возможное,
in
поверьте,
order
для
to
того,
mount
чтобы
the first
поскорее
video
смонтировать
as
первое
soon
видео,
as
ну и
possible.
дальше уже,
And
я думаю,
then,
что процесс
I
будет
think that the
отлажен
process will
и
be
выйдем на
debugged
какой-то
and we
более-менее
will reach some
регулярный
more
темп.
or less regular
Так
pace.
что
So I remind you that we are
напоминаю, что
waiting for
ждем
everyone
всех
in
в Москве
Moscow
на
for
презентации
the
21
presentation on the
мая.
21st of May. Please
Пожалуйста,
subscribe to the
подпишитесь на
page, register on the
страничку,
platform, because
зарегистрируйтесь
we
на
will send a
платформе, потому что мы
specific
будем
venue where it will
отправлять
be, so
конкретное
that you
место
can clearly
проведения,
get the
где это будет,
information.
чтобы вы четко могли получить информацию.
In
И
the
в чате
chat
тоже,
too,
естественно,
naturally subscribe. And
подпишитесь.
I
И
see
вижу
another
еще один
question
вопрос
from
от
Slava.
Славы. Сейчас
Now
я вам
I'll
дам
give you an opportunity.
возможность. Да,
Yes,
включайте микрофон
turn
и
on the
говорите, Слава.
microphone. Say glory.
Good evening. Do you hear? Slavichka
Славочка
Lavrinov.
Лавренов,
Hello, my
привет, мое
heart.
сердце. Привет,
Hello,
драгой
my
мой
dear
человек.
man.
Узнал
Recognized
тебя.
you.
Привет.
The question is about the small pyramids. Let's call them that, their inclusion in a single system, for example. Yes, with this big Tomsk 1, their relationship and their energy transfer potential capabilities. Or are we talking about a small pyramid after all? You know what I'm talking about. Is this still not the option for interconnection and already building a grid? No, it's the same. In order for the pyramids to work as a single complex, they must contain strictly defined coefficients in their geometric system. In their parameters, the height value, the base value. And it's not about the size. Here it is precisely a matter of a number of proportions and ratios and sizes, with the help of which we tune to a certain wavelength and frequency. And then these pyramids begin to work as a single planetary complex. Moreover, the Pyramid of Cheops, it was originally built as a complex of space communications. At the same time, which is very important, the main parameters were tuned to the carrier frequency of the cerebral cortex, inherent in all living on Earth. In other words, it was conceived in such a way that the field of consciousness of the Earth, the so-called Schumann resonances, and so on, were tied to a pyramid, strengthened the pyramid, and with the help of the pyramid of Cheops, came into certain contact with certain representatives. And here the more pyramids, the better. And these small pyramids, which you asked about, we initially build, and their proportions, despite their appearance. They are clearly tuned to the pyramid of Cheops, to the carrier frequency of the brain, precisely so that even regardless of the north-south orientation, they still work as a single complex. Thank you. In principle, even on the second part of the question, what will the grid go on? And it turns out that even on the territory of Russia, if this all happens, we will, in general, activate the rest of the Earth's surface. Of course, here we must remember that we tie everything to the noosphere. We are tied to the carrier frequency of vibrations of a humanoid form of life on Earth. The noosphere is the result of the interaction of people, the consciousness of people, and the consciousness of the Earth. And if this field is with every person who comes to Earth, with every impact made there by a person, as it is correctly expressed, some part of it, its vibration, its knowledge, its attitude. This field, it changes not only in power, but also in quality, of course. Therefore, everything we do, even home pyramids, home office pyramids, small ones, is still all included in the system. And if there are more and more people with a high level of awareness, people who control their emotions, their consciousness, and they consciously invest their energy and vibration in a strictly defined evolutionary work, then this is how we will survive. Due to this, we will make our evolutionary transition. And the outer space will accept us precisely because there are quite a lot of people on Earth who care about this whole story. This is very important. Thank you. Please. We are very much waiting.
Well, shall we wrap it up then slowly?
Yes, it's time, it's time. Just good. I want to say thank you for being with us listening. And we hope that you understand, feel me now. We will live and work as a single family.
Well then, goodbye to everyone. And we are waiting for everyone at the presentation on the 21st of May in Moscow.
Have a nice day.